Hello, this is Key Ideas, and I'm your host, Leela Viss. This podcast contemplates the rhythm of life as a piano teacher and music maker. Through illuminating interviews and transparent reflections, you'll feel validated, encouraged, and empowered. This is episode number 63, in which I'm honored to talk with Murtagh and Hunter McGranahan. Together, they founded Forte. Now, when I first heard about Forte, I didn't have much interest in it because I've become accustomed to Zoom. Well, more like I settled for Zoom. When the Forte developers reached out and asked me to give Forte a try during my online lessons, I said sure, but was skeptical. I didn't see the need to switch to a new platform. I felt at home on Zoom. Can't believe I just said that. But when a pandemic shrinks your world, technology becomes comfortable, something to slip into, just like a pair of favorite sweatpants. But when I tried Forte, I noticed a difference immediately. And when I talked with Mark and Hunter, I realized that Forte is not only a free alternative to Zoom. Forte is a small company with big plans for the future of the world of music. Mark Murtagh worked for years as a trusted advisor to some of the top music institutions in the world, including Juilliard, the Royal College of Music, and Berklee, helping them expand access to high-quality music instruction across the globe. Hunter McGranahan spent years developing music education apps for another startup and has seen firsthand how new tech is accelerating learning outcomes in this sector. Mark and Hunter hold a shared vision and passion, nothing they could have imagined just 2 short years ago. They discuss that vision and give strong arguments that online lessons are or can be better than in-person lessons. After hearing their points, I have to admit that many of them resonated with me, even though I will always be a fan of in-person lessons. Even if you think you don't need a new platform or are not interested in teaching online, I suggest listening into this episode to hear why Forte remains free and how in just a few short years, Forte is becoming the platform of choice for music teachers around the world. With a pandemic still dangerously close in the rearview mirror, we've learned we need online tools, and Forte is one you'll want in your back pocket. Now, here's my conversation with Mark and Hunter. Well, hello, Mark and Hunter. It's so nice to have you join me today here at Key Ideas. Before we go on, let's have both of you introduce yourselves just so the listeners can know who they're listening to. So, Mark, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first, thanks for having us on the show. And my name is Mark Murtagh. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forte. I have a background working as a strategic advisor to educational and cultural institutions, especially some of the top music institutions in the world. And it was through my work with those institutions that the original idea of Forte was born. And it was through that work that I saw the need for something like what we're doing.
Excellent. Okay. And Hunter, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm Hunter McGranahan. I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder at Forte. I've been working at the intersect of music and tech my whole career. Right before Forte, I spent 4 or 5 years at Magic Leap, an augmented reality glasses company, developing their music education platform. So you'd put the AR glasses on, look at an instrument, it would digitally overlay, say, the keys on a piano, and you could put your hands inside of digitally overlaid teacher hands and learn the basic core fundamentals. Before that, I was at a talent agency in Los Angeles working on some VR and music stuff for them. But I'm not a musician myself. So when I was at the tech company before this, building the music education apps, we partnered with Juilliard to figure out how to build out the lesson plan side of those apps. And that's how I knew Mark. And I called him in, I think, April of 2020, because the world had just changed drastically and there were some new opportunities. Mm-hmm. And that is when Forte was born.
Well, it's interesting that we are all talking on Zoom or over Zoom right now. So is Zoom a 4-letter word to you all, or are you're still okay being here on Zoom?
Oh, we love Zoom. Zoom is great for a lot of different use cases. And, you know, we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to the engineers and everyone else at Zoom who made it possible to talk to, our grandmothers, our families, through 2020, 2021, and helped all of us understand that the universe of things that could be done online was actually much greater than we'd realized. People didn't really use their computers to talk to each other prior to Zoom. I mean, it seems like a distant memory now, but remember conference bridge lines where everyone dialed into the same 1-800 number and put in the code and it became a conference call. Zoom wiped that off the map because they came up with a much, much better solution. But it's a better solution for conversations between people like we're having here, or for business meetings. And we just really felt like what music teachers do is so important and so hard that it deserved a purpose-built tool. And that's what we set out to build with Forte. And so, we love Zoom. Zoom's great, but music teachers deserve something built for them.
I use the word that I've settled with Zoom, and someone was questioning me on that. Excuse me. I can have all the equipment in the world on my end, but if my student does not have good Wi-Fi, the sound quality is tanked and the lesson is less than desirable. And so for our listeners' sake, Hunter, why don't you tell us what Forte is, just so that they know what we're talking about, because we've been talking about Zoom. And Forte kind of piggybacked on what Zoom was doing and also serves a community, the music community, in a broader way, a better way. How would you put it?
Zoom is kind of the reason Forte Studio, which is what Forte is today, is what it is. When I started talking to Mark about this idea in early 2020, he'd been working with these amazing conservatories like Berklee College of Music and Royal College of Music in London. And all of these incredible teachers in the conservatories were telling him, Mark, we can't hear our students on Zoom anymore. So Zoom is an amazing tool for what we're doing right now, like a business meeting or a podcast where you're only supposed to hear one person speak at a time, and they drown out the air conditioning in the background, anything that's not the spoken human voice, but it's really bad for instruments. So there was this immediate problem in early 2020 where music teachers and students could no longer hear themselves, and there was no purpose-built tool for instruments online. That's what Forte is today. It's a video calling platform alternative to Zoom or FaceTime that is purpose-built for instrument lessons or voice lessons, to where you can hear the nuances of an instrument. There are musical concepts on Zoom that you just can't teach, like intonation and dynamics. But with Forte, it took us a long time to get it right, almost a whole year, starting in 2020, to where you can hear a long sustained piano note, and Zoom notices that and drowns it out because it's not a voice. Or you can hear the initial attack on a guitar because it doesn't suppress the noise out. And that's what it's been. We launched Forte Studio to the public last September and are so happy that thousands of teachers and students are using it all around the world, on every continent except for Antarctica right now. And this year we've been working towards solving the much greater issue at hand of access. The idea that maybe the world's most promising guitar player lives in the middle of nowhere and only has access to a teacher within a 50 square realm radius of her. And we think that music lessons online solve that issue. You can find a teacher that's great for you somewhere that's not in the neighborhood. So right now it's a video calling software alternative to these business tools. And next year it'll become a place where you can come find a teacher that's right for you, and then use the video calling software for those music lessons with that teacher.
Well, let's segue that into my experience. And then I want to hear you talk about online lessons, but it has not been my favorite, but I was forced to start. And now I have students from across the world. I wouldn't have believed it if you told me that was going to happen. So it really has broadened the horizons and made a huge impact. Now, I still struggle with teaching online. I'd rather teach in person. But Mark, you feel pretty firmly about online lessons being better than in person. Is that true?
It is true, with very few exceptions. Before COVID, the teachers who teach on Forte today, and anyone can use Forte for free. If you're a music teacher and you're looking for a free and better alternative to what you're using now, you can go to www.fortelessons.com, create your own virtual studio, invite your students in and teach online. That just didn't happen before COVID. And before COVID, whenever people talked about taking an in-person lesson and moving it online, the conversation really seemed to focus on what was lost. And I think now what we hear in the music teacher community is more of a focus on what's gained. Mm-hmm. I do think really the most important thing that's gained is what Hunter mentioned, which is access to a better teacher for you. It's just a fact that it's not exclusively true, but it's largely true that music teachers are clustered around cultural capitals. Mm-hmm. It's become a bit of a cliche to say, but it's true that talent is randomly distributed, but opportunity is not. Students who students who deserve your talent as a music teacher, whose talent is deserving of your skills as a music teacher, could be anywhere. Hunter and I we talk a lot about how we would define long-term success for Forte. And one of the ways we define it is if we saw evidence that more students were trying an instrument and sticking with it longer because they found the right teacher for them, not just the teacher who happened to live in the neighborhood. And I think maybe a lot of young people choose guitar or piano because that's the teacher who lives in the neighborhood. There is no saxophone teacher in the neighborhood. And if they don't happen to like the piano teacher who lives in the neighborhood, then maybe they drop it too soon and they miss out on something. So that access issue, I think, is really very important. But there are a lot of other advantages to doing lessons online. We hear all the time from music teachers, and from day one when we started building Forte, we made sure we just had a continuous feedback loop from music teachers, so that we're building for their very specific use case, and we needed to make sure we were getting their feedback so we were doing it right. Left to our own devices, we would have done it wrong. And we did do some things wrong. We fixed it when the teachers told us it was bad. But the convenience of doing lessons online, teachers who used to maybe be able to fit in 4 lessons a day because they had to go from place to place, or they had to schedule in transition time for the in-person lessons, can now much more easily just stack the lessons back to back if they want. Something like 82% of the lessons on Forte, we've got thousands of hours of instruction per month on the platform right now. Over 80% of the lessons are happening on weekdays in the afternoon. And, that doesn't work well for a lot of modern families if it has to be in person. The convenience factor is important. The safety factor is important. You're not leaving, as a parent, you're not leaving your son or daughter alone in the room with an adult. There's interesting research coming out of the UK that eye contact is significantly increased between a teacher and a student during an online lesson versus in person. One of the things that teachers, and we didn't really maybe think about this in advance, but it makes sense. One of the things that teachers tell us they really like is just, if you're teaching online, you just have all your tools with you all the time. And, that could be, your library of YouTube videos, your go-to videos for demonstrating different musical concepts to your students, your musical notation software. It's really easy to record a lesson on Forte. You just push a button. You don't have to set up a webcam or on a tripod for the in-person lesson. And the having all of your tools with you all of the time allows you to focus more on your student and do your best teaching. And so, I'm not here to say that everything is easier and better online versus in person. It's not. Violin teachers tell us it's harder online to tell how hard a student is gripping a bow, for example.
Mm-hmm.
In person, that's a lot easier. But when you weigh those downsides against all of the upsides, particularly that access question, I think it's not surprising that we're seeing as most of the world, is kind of coming out the other side of the dark tunnel of COVID. Lessons really do seem to be tipping to more online. 78% of the lessons on Forte are between a teacher and a student who are in a different city. And so similar to your experience, we feel good about that. We hope to continue to enable that.
And just one more feature on top of everything Mark said when we're talking about like the difference in online versus in person, this technology, what we're doing right now, like Mark referred to, talking to each other through a computer, the tech is still in its infancy. So we're still figuring out ways to make online music lessons better than in person. One of the things we did earlier this year, maybe late last year, in-person lessons, I used to do the same thing. I'd forget my notebook when I'd go to my piano lessons, and the teacher would be mad. We have a feature on Forte, we call it the shared notebook, where think of it as a Google Doc. The teacher and student have access to a live notebook that they can take notes in, share homework in, and they can communicate through that notebook in the lesson. But importantly, in between lessons, when that's more important than the hour you spend per week during the lesson, it's the time you spend practicing. The teacher can tag the student in the middle of the week and check in on them, or the student can tag the teacher and ask about questions they have about their homework assignment and things like that. There's a feature we've added where you can point your phone at a QR code and launch a second camera that automatically launches a self-facing camera feed that teachers can put close up on their hand on the neck of a guitar or have a bird's eye view of the piano. And I'm sure there are going to be a number of features that we haven't even thought of yet that as this technology evolves are going to enhance the lesson experience, things that you could never do in person.
Well, and you kind of jumped ahead. That's what I was going to ask you specifically, Hunter. What is unique about Forte versus a Zoom lesson? So the QR code is brilliant. I love that. And yes, I like the idea of sharing notes. What else sets Forte apart from a typical Zoom lesson?
The bells and whistles are cool. The QR code is cool. The shared notebook is cool. The way we do our screen sharing, right now, if I were to share a piece of sheet music, all three of us would be relegated to these tiny little thumbnails on the side of the screen. And in a music lesson, you want to be able to see your teacher or your student, vice versa. So we allow we automatically launch the screen. The sheet music is half the screen. The teacher is half the screen. The student can change the size to their liking. The real secret sauce with Forte is the audio, the full duplex audio. We spent over a year running pilot programs with our conservatory partners. So teachers from the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia in early 2021 with students in California, and then teachers from the Royal College of Music in London and students across Asia, trying to really get we call it Forte Pure Audio right. And there are so many little knobs under the hood that we had to twist to get it to be, one size fits all for all the instruments right now. And these teachers, say the head of the piano department at one of these amazing conservatories would tell us that piano note's dropping after 7.5 seconds. And it's not my student not playing, and it's not my computer, it's Forte. And Mark and I were like, what is she talking about? And we'd have to go back to the engineers and listen to it together and like, oh, she was right. And then we'd have to tweak that a little bit. So, on Zoom, if you were sitting there jamming on a guitar right now and you missed a note, I have to be like, wait, because only one person can talk at a time, right? You see this, lime green bar around my face, and that's not natural. That's why there's Zoom fatigue, right? You have to pay really close attention to when that person's done, and sometimes you lose time. We had teachers telling us that Mark can share a story about one teacher hurting her vocal cords, trying to do that. But with Forte, it's very natural. It's like you're sitting next to them. You can interrupt them. A trumpet player can play a long drone note, and the student can play off of that drone note on FaceTime and Zoom and other platforms, business tools. only one person's supposed to be speaking at a time. So our Forte Pure Audio is really the one that stands above all the other bells and whistles, and why teachers love our platform more than others.
What I found is that having an online component in my studio, I would call my studio a hybrid studio. And now I really rarely have makeup lessons, which I didn't really want to offer anyway. But if someone is sick, they're usually okay. But I really don't want to see them if they're sick. And now we can hop online. And especially I've got some students that you just know their Wi-Fi is not going to be great. And we used Forte and it was fantastic. Now the video quality wasn't as good because their Wi-Fi wasn't strong, but the audio was all there. And so I would deem it a very successful lesson compared to what I have had. So I'm all for it. And I wholeheartedly agree that the sound is just amazing. And you're right. I can say, hey, wait. And then they can hear me without this wobbled sound.
Because Forte is built for, this is kind of the point. All these other platforms are built for everything, right? Business meetings being primary for Zoom, but other platforms similarly are built for other use cases. Like, for a language lesson, you don't need to prioritize the audio over the video. But for an instrument lesson, if the Wi-Fi is bad, you saw your video gets a little more blurred because the audio is prioritized. You could take, a videoless music lesson if you had to. The audio is more important for this use case, which is why we're only focused on music.
We also don't do what Zoom does, and we've all experienced it, where if the Wi-Fi connection isn't great, you can see like the video will speed up or to try and catch up to the audio. We don't do any of that. We make sure the audio runs smooth and clean all the way through.
And that's what I experienced the other night, and it was beautiful.
Great. Yes. That makes us happy. The other thing I would say, and it's an important point, is a lot of students are 8 years old, and you can waste 20 minutes of an hour lesson trying to get the settings right on Zoom and other platforms. We're just set up so that it just works. We're not looking to impress users with the number of features and the numbers of buttons, the number of bells and whistles. We want the technology to disappear. And we want the teacher to be at the center of the educational experience for the student. And so we measure success to the extent that people forget they're using Forte when they're in a lesson. And you see that, we have lots of fights we have wonderful engineers, but we have lots of fights with engineers about adding another button or, another, indicator somewhere. We don't want any of that. We want it to be very clean. So it's just nothing between you and your student.
Well, I appreciate that because I am known for being kind of a tech guru in the piano teaching world. And I only like things that are easy and simple for me to understand. And so I was a little bit leery, like, you know what? I just figured out Zoom. Don't give me something else. I really wasn't interested in Forte, to be honest. Like, I've got it figured out. No, thank you. And then I tried like, whoa, okay, well, this is easy. There wasn't a learning curve. Now, of course, when you jump on something all the time, you are going to be more and more familiar. And what's really neat is to see that, now we just added a waiting room. Some of those things that I had taken for granted, now they're being added in. And I appreciate that. And it's not a big deal. I didn't have to change my settings. All of a sudden it was there. So thank you for protecting us against too many bells and whistles. I appreciate that.
If there's ever too many, let us know.
Okay. Yes, I will. I do have a big question that looms in the back of my mind, and I'm sure there's others who are asking the same thing. Is like, Forte is free. Well, how long is it going to be free? Because we all know we've been, talked into free before, and then suddenly it's not. So I know people probably are asking that question. So what are your answers?
We get asked that question all the time, and it's a fair question. We're very fortunate that we have a great group of investors who are very supportive of our mission to radically expand access to better music education. And because of that, they're supportive of us offering the Forte Studio, the video conferencing tool, for free to teachers who bring their own students to the platform. That said, we're a company, and companies have to make money eventually. And what we're going to do is when we launch what we're calling Forte Connect, which Hunter mentioned, the ability for students to come to Forte and find a teacher who's a good fit for them. If we introduce a new student to a teacher and we have that teacher expand his or her lesson studio, then we'll take a small fee on that. And then going forward, we may have premium features like practice enhancement tools that we may charge fees for down the road. But the core tool that teachers know and love today, if the teacher brings their own student to Forte, that will be free forever. We do that because we are trying to build a large community of music teachers to support a large community of students we're going to bring to the platform who are looking for a great teacher who's a great fit. And sometime early next year, we'll have that ability for students and teachers to get matched up and running. And that's when we'll start to charge that fee.
Thank you. Yes. And that makes sense because, we can always use this for free. And I think knowing that will make people want to stay with you because, the platform is only going to get better and better. I want to go back to that word community in just a minute, but Hunter, I have a question for you. So you being the Mr. Technology guru here, what do you foresee coming yet to Forte? Do you see some cool additions which don't require too many bells and whistles?
Feature-wise on the video calling tool, right now we have focused all of our engineers on Forte Connect. So very soon you'll see the ability to schedule your students on Forte, like think about a Google Calendar or another purpose-built scheduling tool for music lessons, because we know music lessons are different than business meetings in terms of how often they need to be rescheduled and canceled and moved up or moved down. Soon after that, you'll have the ability to run your billing through Forte. So I know it's a bit awkward to chase parents for cancellation fees for under 24 hours. On Forte, you'll be able to do that very easily. Then after that, we're going to be totally focused on allowing all the teachers who do want to teach on Forte Connect to set up their public profile and upload anything they want to upload onto their profile for potential new students to see. We're working hard on that matching algorithm to figure out the best way to figure out who's great for who, instead of just, shoving new students into this really long list of a ton of teachers and they have no idea really who they are, or if they like the same music as them, or if they like to teach students that aspire to be what they aspire to be. There will be an in-app messaging feature. Right now we have the chat function, and it automatically downloads to a PDF, or on Zoom, I know you have to kind of take a picture with your phone if you share any notes or anything in the chat. But we don't have that persistent always message thread that sticks even when you're out of the lesson. Those will be the big 5 features coming up before we launch Forte Connect. After that, we will be able to focus more on, maybe building out group lessons on Forte Studio, or developing an iOS app so people can use Forte Studio on their iPhone instead of just iPad and desktop. There's a million things we want to do, and it is truly painful having to prioritize because we talk to our teachers so much, and there's so many amazing, like I was saying earlier, like this tech is in its infancy, and there's so many amazing things we can do, but we're a small company right now, so we have to make the painful decisions on what we need to prioritize now. But yeah, the in-lesson experience, the Forte Studio that you see right now, there won't be too many changes to that before maybe mid next year. Once we get that Forte Connect product up and rolling and new students are finding new teachers, we'll have more bandwidth to focus on adding more intentionally placed bells and whistles.
Yes.
Learning to play an instrument it's a complicated, multifaceted endeavor. And it touches on a lot of different things. It touches on technical skills, on developing your own, creative voice, your own artistic voice. It requires knowledge of music theory, music history, It requires public performance. You need an instrument. You need to buy an instrument. You need to buy sheet music. You might need other gear. I mean, all these different aspects of learning to play an instrument. If you think about it, there are ways that we can help make that better on our platform. And so over time, we want to we want to be the place where everyone can easily, effortlessly get everything they need and just focus on the learning.
Well, I have to give you a lot of
vision.
Yes, I have to give you a lot of credit for that vision because I can see it in action. I get emails saying, "Hey, we're going to meet up in 60 minutes. Anybody who wants to join?" And I have not joined one of your community hours. I can't remember exactly what you call it, but kind of a meetup. And it sounds like you're listening to teachers. You're hearing how their experience is going, and that's probably where you get ideas for new additions to Forte. So how have you seen that benefit teachers?
A long time ago, it seems like years ago, but it was really just a year and a half ago, we built a scheduling function on Forte, and we did it quickly. We were a little scrappy about it, and the teachers who used it were very blunt about how bad a job we did, and it was an important lesson. We didn't
really piano teachers can be blunt. I can't imagine that.
It was an important lesson. We didn't ask before we built it. We just tried to get it done quickly, and so I would say every aspect of Forte has feedback from teachers, whether they're teachers from top conservatories or they're more everyday teachers. Every aspect of Forte has feedback from teachers kind of built into its DNA. The new version of screen sharing that Hunter mentioned, that was designed completely based on what teachers said they wanted. And it's true what Hunter said, it's painful having to decide what we build next because we can't build everything all at once. I would also say the prioritization of new features is what is one way that teachers are particularly helpful to us. The waiting room. We were asked for that a lot. And so that's why we built that sooner rather than later. But the community office hours, they're every Tuesday at 1:00 Eastern time. And if you sign up as in Create a Virtual Studio on Forte, you will get an email reminding you that that's going on. You can join anytime. It's a great opportunity for teachers not just to talk about Forte, but to talk about just the experience of being a teacher who's teaching music online. And through our blog, we recommend new gear sometimes, and then we want to hear, did you try it? Did you try that new microphone? How did it work for you? Do you like it better than the one you had before? All of that stuff is just an opportunity for teachers to connect with each other and continue to improve what they do for their students through help from other teachers.
Yes, I appreciate that blog. I like the ideas, the tips, and then also experiences, just spotlighting a teacher and how they're doing, because we can always learn from each other.
Yeah. And we've got terrific teachers. And some of them are just teaching with the laptop and they're using the internal mic and the internal speakers of their laptops. And we've got some teachers who have insane technical setups that are there's a drum teacher in Malaysia named Steve who's got it seems like he's got 1 million cameras, 1 million microphones, and he's got it all mixed together seamlessly. He loves the gear. And so we try to feature a mix of teachers who are at different points on that spectrum, but it's fun to see.
It's important to note, Forte, you don't need anything to use Forte. You just need a laptop or an iPad. You don't have to have any external webcams or microphones or anything for it. It obviously works. It sounds better with headphones, but you don't need them. It sounds better with another microphone, but but you don't need it. That was our goal, to make sure it could be, we tested it with those incredibly demanding teachers from the top conservatories in the world, because we knew if it would work for them, it could work for everyone. And we don't require anything else besides a decent internet connection and your computer or your iPad for it to work for anybody.
Well, and I have this fancy microphone, but I don't teach with it. My studio is right over there, and I don't use any fancy gear. I didn't want to be tied to headphones and all that kind of stuff. So, and it does work well. So I like pioneers in the field, and I follow, but I follow slowly. So I do always appreciate good information that I could maybe use in the future to up my game. So anything else we can cover today about Forte?
You've asked, I think, all of the most important questions. We really do want to be a community. Some music teachers work in music schools, whether they're community music schools or conservatories or the music departments of the university, and they've got great community around them. Others are more isolated. One of our top users is a grandmother from Montana. Her daughter and son-in-law moved to Las Vegas, and they were worried about her being up in Montana. She's, getting on the years, and the winters are harsh, and she didn't want to, she'd want to move to Las Vegas, even though it meant being closer to her daughter and her son-in-law and her grandkids. But she didn't want to, she had 50 piano students in Montana, and she didn't want to leave them behind. But she did, and she moved to Las Vegas, and she kept 35 of those students. There's, a guitar teacher in Belize who is Cuban, who teaches guitar students back in Havana. A violin teacher in Singapore who used to live in Nairobi and had to leave those students behind when she moved home to Singapore. But with Forte now, she's reconnected with those students in Nairobi. We want to empower that. The things I just mentioned there were all between teacher and student. We want to empower community between music teachers and between students as well. We want people to feel like Forte is their home for everything about their technical and artistic development on their instrument. And so that is something we're always striving for. And we've got, we think, good ideas for how to continue to enhance that. But to the extent that any of your listeners have more and better ideas for how to do that, we're all ears all the time.
Yeah, we really believe that this, one-stop shop for everything you need to learn an instrument is a product that needs to exist in the world. The fact that it hasn't already is unfortunate. But Mark and I are not musicians. We have some incredible musicians on our team, but we can't do this without the help of music teachers and students. So like you said, we are very communicative. help@fortelessons.com. We have real humans responding to people, not AI bots. And we really do need the feedback. So we welcome anyone into our community.
What's interesting is that I've heard before, us in the trenches, on the ground piano teachers, we're building the next people that will be going to the conservatories. And when you talk about, you're talking to all different teachers from all different levels of instruction. And if we can connect with those teachers as well, I can see, that community building and growing, which there hasn't been that opportunity before. And the other thing that now you're bringing music to the world, right? To every inch of the world. It doesn't have to just be in those urban, densely populated areas. So I really appreciate that vision. I hadn't really thought about that. I was just thinking about, okay, well, this looks like another alternative, but it's much more than that. I really appreciate your vision.
Yeah, and others have tried to solve that problem by, building algorithms that, purport to teach you to play an instrument. And, we're supportive of anything that brings more music into the life of a young person, including those apps and those algorithms. But ultimately, playing music, whether you're, aspiring to go to a top conservatory, or you just want to jam with your friends, or you want to play better at church on Sunday, ultimately playing music is among the highest forms of an expression of the human spirit. And the way to make that better is by enhancing human connections. And so our technology is always in service to the human connection. It's never technology for technology's sake. It's never technology to replace the human connection. It's all in service to that communication. And if we succeed on that front, then that's kind of, both Hunter and I believe that's first paragraph of our obituaries.
Oh, could you have ever imagined that you would be talking to me right now about something called Forte in your career paths?
No, not even when we had that first call back in April of 2020, when Hunter and I hatched this idea. Obviously we thought it was a good idea, and we thought we could really help, and we thought we could create something great, but we had no idea how quickly it would take off, and it's just been thrilling to see.
And Hunter, no idea. You're not even in the music world, right? So,
music's been the thing I love most about the world forever.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I, I'm not a musician. I am taking piano lessons again.
Oh, good for you.
After quitting.
Did you find the right teacher? Have you connected with the right teacher?
I found a few. I do a lot of, market research on other ways to find music teachers. I love the one I'm using now.
Okay.
But it just became very obvious. It wasn't obvious somehow before. The tech I was doing at Magic Leap was kind of what Mark's talking about. It's an algorithm. You can learn the main power chord progressions to play 90% of pop songs, and you go from level 0 to 87 in like 3 months, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then you hit this wall, and all these companies will tell you, I used to talk to all of them, they all experience the same issue. You're no longer learning rapidly, and you need like instant feedback and the realization was you need a human to give you a personalized lesson plan in order to become the musician you want to become, someone who likes the same genre as you or understands where you want to go. And when we started talking in April 2020 and kind of canvassed the space, the fact that there was no place for that, there was, if you wanted to go learn German tonight, your brain would automatically go to Rosetta Stone or Duolingo or something like that. But if you wanted to go take a live guitar lesson tonight, there's somehow nothing in the 2020s. So the fact that there was nothing like that already, obviously we can't tell the future, but we knew that this is something that needed to exist. So there really wasn't a decision to make. It was let's go do that.
Well, congratulations to both of you for taking the steps to move forward, and where you've landed already is remarkable. And we can't wait to see where you will lead us next. So hopefully you will get lots of converts. I'm trying my hardest to talk people into it. And I don't think I'm having a hard time, especially because it's free and because they know it's made and engineered for music teachers. So it's a easy sale, I got to say.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for everything you do for the community of music educators. It's always great to connect with a kindred spirit. And, the work you do, the information you disseminate, it's we're all working toward the same goal here, is to fill the world with more music and the next generation of musicians.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining me, both of you. So we will make sure that we link Forte.com. Is it Forte.com?
ForteLessons.com.
ForteLessons.com. Okay. In the show notes, so everyone can find you and set up their free online studio through Forte Lessons.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having us.
At the Forte website, it says this: in 2020, Mark and Hunter saw an acute need for a purpose-built online music education platform. Forte is their solution to that problem, and they are thrilled to see teachers from all over the world using it to do their best teaching online. End quote. My guess is that in 2023, teachers from around the world will be thrilled to be teaching their best online lessons thanks to Forte. Head to the show notes and get the link to ForteLessons.com to set up your free virtual studio. I'll leave you with a quote that Mark stated in our conversation and that I found also on the Forte website. It's from the late social entrepreneur named Layla Jana. She says, Talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. It appears that Forte is literally leveling the playing field. Once you open your free account, you'll notice that Forte is launching a marketplace where they will be connecting teachers with students globally. A huge thank you to Mark and Hunter for their continued efforts to build a quality platform so that music can be enjoyed in all the corners of the world. ForteLessons.com is a regular and generous sponsor of Key Ideas. I greatly appreciate their support. I'm Leela Viss. See you in the trenches, teaching in person and on Forte, and filling the world with a little more music.